Good evening. So we've got the Sermon on the Plain here from St. Luke, which is compared sometimes to the Sermon on the Mount in St. Matthew, both of which give us the account of the Beatitudes. St. Matthew's Sermon on the Mount is just the blessed are the poor, blessed are those who thirst for righteousness. But the Luke one, I like to refer to the Lucan account of the Beatitudes as the scary Beatitudes, because he goes through first and he does all the blessed are's, but then he says, "But woe to you who are rich, woe to you who are filled now, woe to you who laugh now, woe to you when all speak well of you, for their ancestors treated the false prophets in the same way." And oftentimes I think as Catholics, we think of things in a very binary way, and I think part of that's because we're American too. And we're just wired to think of things as it's either this or it's that. It's either on or off. It's either black or white. And when we do that with our faith, when we do that with Catholicism, and we don't recognize that there's a little bit of I don't want to say gray area, but maybe kind of more like a ping pong machine where there's kind of some back and forth that we do. A lot of things that people look at as Catholics, they like to say it's got to be either or. But in reality, as Catholics, we're a religion of both and. We're a religion that looks and says, well, yes, divine revelation comes to us through sacred scripture and also through the tradition of the church. We're people who look and we say, yes, we're called to have noble, dignified worship of God and give him our very best, yet we're also called to care for the poor and the vulnerable. And so it's not simply an either or, which makes it difficult because sometimes we like to try to put ourselves into categories and say, well, this is kind of who I am. And we see it, of course, in our world now, so much division in the world because it's either I'm here or I'm here. But Jesus comes and he says, okay, blessed are the poor, blessed are you who are hungry, blessed are you who are weeping, blessed are you when people hate you because of me. And then woe to you rich, woe to you who are filled now, woe to you who laugh now, woe to you when all speak well of you. It's understood that this sermon of Jesus's was probably one that he gave multiple times. So maybe one time he gave it on a hill, right? And that's the one that Matthew recorded. Maybe one time he gave it on a plain. And maybe he kind of tweaked certain things. But for the large part, it was probably like, this is the thing that I want you to know about me. And so people would gather to come and to listen. And so here these people have gathered and they've come to listen to Jesus. And they're listening to this sermon that he's preaching on this plain. And they're probably hearing and thinking, this is the guy that's done all the miracles, that's healed people, that's risen a guy from the dead, that's opened the eyes of the blind, that's done all of these wonderful things. And he's saying, blessed are you when people hate you and when they exclude you and insult you and denounce your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. If I'm, going to some rally and listening and that's what's being said is, blessed are you when they hate you. How fortunate you are, how lucky you are that people are going to hate you because of me. Probably not the person I really want to follow, right? Because I'm thinking to myself, well, here on earth, I don't want to be hated. I want to be loved. Here on earth, I want to be able to, be respected. I want to be able to be successful. I want to be able to do all of the things that you're supposed to do here in this world. But Jesus calls us to the opposite. For many of us, we perhaps think of our lives as living for here and now, living on this earth. What can I do here? What can I amass here? How can I gain the greatest sense of success, of pleasure, of fame, of whatever it is? How can I gain that here and now? Well, if we focus on that, if we only focus on what we have, if we only focus on dining sumptuously and laughing and just, living kind of in the moment of what's going on around us right now. We want people to speak well of us. We want people to say, oh, you're so wonderful. You're such a good person. You're exactly what the world says you're supposed to be. Jesus says, no, don't do that. Don't live like that. But rather deny yourself. Look at this world as not a place where we seek fulfillment, but rather let us look at this world as a place whereby we are walking towards heaven, where we are denying ourselves here and now, where we are looking to the example of the cross, where we're saying, yes, let us renounce the ways of the world so that we may embrace the ways of heaven. Now, that doesn't mean that we just completely kind of like abandon the fact that we're here in the world. No, we are. We live here in the world, and so we have to take advantage of the ways of the world. And so Jesus says, woe to you who are rich. Well, there's rich people. He says, blessed are you who are poor. Well, does that mean if you got money that you're out of luck? A lot of people will look at it that way and say, yeah, it must be. Some people will try to say like, well, it's just kind of metaphors and you just got to sort of balance things. But the idea of having great resource, having great knowledge, comes with the responsibility of also using that to help others to grow closer to God as well. Recently in political discourse, we heard this phrase, Ordo Amoris, the order of love, something that really is rooted in Scripture and that is discussed a little bit by St. Augustine and again discussed by St. Thomas Aquinas. And it's this idea that, you love the thing closest to you first. You love your family. Even within a family, husband and wife love each other first before they love their kids. And recognizing that from that love, it kind of goes out. So if Jesus is saying, blessed are the poor and woe to you rich, and we're thinking, well, I'm loving my family well because I'm kind of amassing everything to take care of my family, to make sure that my family is provided for, to make sure that my family is beyond comfortable. And that's me loving well. That's me pouring myself out for those around me. Okay. But then at a certain point, there's a pouring out that goes beyond that, right? There's a pouring out that says, okay, well, my barns are full. I'm not going to just tear down my barns and build bigger barns, but rather I'm going to use what I have to assist those around me. And sometimes that means I have to deny myself. So Lent is coming up, right? Today, traditionally in the old calendar, pre-1970, was known as Septuagesima Sunday, kind of 70. Lent is Quadragesima, 40, right? So starting a little bit further out, week 7, week 6, week 5, and then into Lent. And it was a way for the church to kind of ease us into Lent a little bit, to say, okay, we're gonna do fasting, we're gonna do prayer, we're gonna do almsgiving. We're going to really strive to grow closer to Christ and holiness through these 3 practices. And part of me is like, okay, I'm glad that we don't have Septuagesima anymore because I don't really like fasting and doing penance. But the other part of me is like, gosh, I sort of wish we still had Septuagesima because it helps to ease in, right? It's not just like, okay, it's Ash Wednesday, whatever you're giving up, you're done with. I think it's important that we start thinking about Lent, though, so that when Ash Wednesday arrives, we don't just think to ourselves like, well, what am I going to do here? I'll give up chocolate, even though I don't eat it. I think it would be really appropriate for us to really challenge ourselves this Lent. Earlier this week, I was writing my March bulletin letter, and I realized that it'll come out a couple days before Ash Wednesday, so I said I should start reflecting on Ash Wednesday. And I started thinking to myself, well, what am I going to give up? What am I going to do? How am I going to really try to enter into Lent? And I thought of what I did last year, and I thought, yeah, that was tough, and it was challenging, but it really bore a lot of fruit. And then I started thinking, well, what could I do this year? Do the same thing that I did last year, or maybe try to step up the challenge a little bit more? And then I started thinking, gosh, I should challenge the people of St. Clair as well. And say, like, think about that one thing in your life that you really, really love. The thing that you kind of say, well, I deserve this, right? Or the thing that you kind of say, like, this is my outlet. This is the thing that I do. Last night, I used the example of golf. I imagine that most of our golfers in this church right now, if I suggested you give up golf for Lent, you'd say, you're nuts. I could give up golf for Lent because I only play it like every 2 weeks. But so it wouldn't really be a sacrifice. That's my point. Think about whatever it is in your life that you're really attached to. Maybe you're too attached to. And think, well, how can I, in a penitential way, deny myself that good thing And again, we don't give up sin, right? That defeats the purpose. We should be striving to give up sin anyway. So don't say, okay, well, I've got this sinful habit, so I'm going to try to give it up for Lent to be better. No, give something up that's good, that you enjoy. Give something up that will be a challenge. Maybe it's watching cable news all day long. I promise you, if you do that, you're going to be a lot happier in the end. Maybe it is giving up golf. Maybe it's giving up whatever it is. But really challenge yourself. Think of something that is difficult. We don't like difficulty. We live in a world that we automate things, and we have self-driving cars now, and we can set our lights on schedules, or we can talk to some box that's plugged in and it'll turn our lights on and off for us, or whatever it is that we do. I was thinking, what would we do if that storm last night that I thought the rectory was going to blow over? I normally sleep through storms, no problem, but I woke up and I was a little scared. Not really scared, just I thought the rain was coming down sideways. But imagine that, that knocked everything out. Or actually a really good example, last night from that storm, the Legionaries of Christ in Atlanta, they're a religious order of priests, and their house was struck by lightning and it burnt down. It's a good thing they have a vow of poverty, because they're like, well, okay, we took a vow of poverty, so yeah, it's inconvenient, but... And you hear that and you're like, well, that sounds a little insensitive, Father. No. That's the whole point, is the vow of poverty detaches you from things of this world. So what if we were to, have our house burned down, or we were to get hit by an EMP, and your car doesn't work anymore, and there's no electricity, and you can't preserve food, and you can't use your microwave, and you don't have internet? How would we react to that? Would we just look and say, well, okay, you know what, I'm glad that God spared my life and I'm still here? Or would we just kind of be fretting about and thinking, oh no, this is the end of the world, what's going to happen, how are we going to survive this catastrophe of not having the internet or electricity or cars, unless it's from before 1980? How would we really legitimately react to that? You might think, oh, well, that's just crazy speculation, and yeah, maybe it is. But I think it's important that we do that. We kind of look and say, how would I respond? How would my faith hold up? Would I say, well, thank God for my life. Thank God for the fact that God is present to me. And say, okay, we'll keep moving forward. I don't know how. I don't know what that'll look like, but I'm going to just keep trusting in God. And then we think about Lent, and we say, okay, I'm going to give something up for Lent. Give up golf for Lent. Oh, maybe it's not such a bad idea. Give up TV for Lent. Give up watching the news for Lent. Give up, you listen to three podcasts a day. Maybe you can only listen to one, or maybe don't listen to any. Except for Truth Unplugged. You can always listen to that. I'll give you an exemption on that, a dispensation. That's only once a week, though. But to really think about that, to challenge myself, to listen to these words of Christ as he's saying, blessed are those who are poor, and woe to you rich. Blessed are you when people hate you, and they exclude you, and they insult you, and denounce your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. And then woe to you when all speak well of you, for their ancestors treated the false prophets in this way. I was listening to Bishop Barron's sermon, as I often do on Saturdays to prepare for the weekend, and he pointed out that last line, that woe to you when all speak well of you, and he speaking to priests and seminarians, and he said, back in the seminary when he was the rector, he used to always remind the guys, after Mass, when people come up to you and pat you on the back and they're like, great job, Father, we loved what you said, we agreed with every word, it generally means that you weren't really challenging them, you were just kind of saying what they wanted to hear. But when people come out and when they're like, I can't believe you said that, I can't believe you made that challenge, or I'm upset by the fact that you challenged me in something. I'm upset that you would even consider the fact that I would give up golf for Lent. How do you think I could do that? that I would give up following the news for Lent. I need to be informed. And so we have to ask ourselves, and we have to ask God, God, help me to know what it is that's holding me back from doing your will, or that is distracting me from doing your will. Again, even if it's a good thing. Something that I'm kind of using to sort of just not have to do as much because I'm happy, because I'm laughing. Woe to you who laugh now, you who will grieve and weep. And blessed are you who are now weeping, for you will laugh. And so to recognize the ways in our lives in which we can perhaps invite a little bit more suffering, which to this modern world, that concept is just so insane. Like if I were to get up in any other setting than this, even any other church than this, like if I were to go to a Protestant church and say like, hey, can I preach the sermon this week? I don't know the likelihood of that happening. They certainly wouldn't invite me back after what I was about to say, because I'd say, hey, we need to embrace suffering. We need to look at the cross. We need to look at the fact that Jesus hanging on the cross is a sign to us that we're called to embrace that suffering. There are people all over the world who suffer regularly. There are people who all over the world, live in war-torn, just awful situations. The Holy Land groups here selling the olive wood carvings after Mass, and we look at those and we're like, oh, those are nice. Oh, that statue of St. Michael's nice for $7,500. It says if you buy it, give it to the parish, though. That's what it says on the card. I'm not... But why is it that we have people from the Holy Land, from Bethlehem, coming and selling these religious articles? It's because right now in the Holy Land, where the Christians are caught up between conflicts of the Jews and the Muslims, and have been for the last 1,000+ years, it's because that's their livelihood, is pilgrims coming to visit. And there's nobody coming to visit right now. There's nobody coming to visit, at least from the Western world. And so we look and we say, these people go without. They struggle, they suffer. They go hungry sometimes even. And so the ability to be able to say, okay, well, I can buy something that is nice and will remind me of God, and I know that it's going to support Christians in a war-torn area. Well, that's a good thing. Also, it makes me reflect on the fact that when I think I've got it bad, I just have to think to other parts of the world. Right? When I get out of bed and put my foot down on the carpet and one of the cats had groomed too much and too much fur came off, and then, stepping in a hairball, that's gross. And I'm like, oh no, the suffering if I stepped in this hairball of this animal that I domesticated and put inside my house, and, that I feed food that I have to pay more money for because they were fat and they needed to lose weight. Right? We kind of think of the excesses. We think of the excesses in our own lives and say, maybe it would do me some good to have a little suffering. Is it scary? Yes. It's very, very scary to think about suffering. What if instead of giving up golf or giving up watching TV or the news, what if you gave up hot water? That's like a legitimate penance that people have done, well, I guess since we've had hot water. And of course, parts of the world where that's just the way that people live, they don't have hot water. When I was in Honduras, the way that we got hot water was either we microwaved it, or you went to the hardware store and bought the $30 shower head that had an electric cord coming out of it that you plugged into the wall. They called it the Widowmaker. And now I think oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine not having hot water. So over these next 3 weeks leading up to Lent, meditate on these Beatitudes, the scary Beatitudes as Father Tim calls them. Meditate on what it is in your life, what area of your life maybe you can cut back on. What area of your life that you can maybe say, even though this is a good thing that I enjoy, I'm going to set it aside and embrace a little bit of suffering, unite my suffering to Christ. Because, yeah, it'll be difficult, but it'll also help me grow in holiness. And I tell you what, if all of us here in this parish were to do that, if all of us were to really embrace a penance, remember in the gospel when Jesus says some demons can only be cast out by prayer and fasting, if all of us really truly fasted, denied ourselves, well, we would be just a parish full of saints, and we would go out into the world and we would proclaim the good news, and we'd be able to go out and say, hey guys, blessed are you when people denounce you and mock you and yell at you because of Jesus Christ. And they'd see the joy in our lives, and they'd say, wow, that doesn't make any sense, but it's really convincing. And so let us ask that God would continue to help us over these weeks leading up to Lent, that indeed we may be made aware of what it is that he's asking us to do. We may have the courage and the strength to do it.